You can speak now live on LBC and LBC News to Benham Ben Taleblu, Iranian-American analyst at the FDD think tank specialising in Iranian security and political issues, including weaponry and proliferation. Thank you so much for joining us. What is your reaction to what we've seen overnight?
Greetings and good morning to you and your listeners. No doubt there's nothing short of history being made with this strike. But as some of your callers and panelists and guests were saying, history will also be made by the nature of the Iranian response. For about 2 decades, as President Trump was saying in his shorter statement, we heard the names of these facilities like Natanz and Fordo talked about consistently. But President Trump has quite literally just used American military might to take them off the table. And what was reportedly a safer and easier counterproliferation operation that followed a week of Israel's military successes against the regime defanging Tehran's long-range strike capabilities. If Khamenei responds militarily, despite the reported news that Trump had actually sent a letter to the Iranians saying this is not about regime change, he actually would be the one pushing, through responding, to widen a war that a president who has been trying to get out of the Middle East doesn't want. So that's the irony of the situation that we are facing.
What might an Iranian military response look like?
It's an excellent question because traditionally the regime's transnational terrorist apparatus called the axis of resistance, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, Shia militias, would be at the forefront of that response. But the Israeli military successes in the post-October 7 Middle East have neutered much of them, let alone U.S. activities against the Houthis, as well as the fact that even Iraq's fractious domestic politics, the Shia militias have not stood up that much. Iran could widen the war already by continuing to escalate its missile attacks and drone attacks against Israel, but perhaps most worrisome is the potential to go after U.S. diplomatic facilities and bases within the Persian Gulf Basin and the northern tier of the Middle East. Critically, while Israel has gone after Iran's medium-range ballistic missiles, which are not as precise, Iran still has an arsenal of short-range ballistic missiles, and those are much more precise. And those were the projectiles that Iran had used in January 2020 to go after 2 U.S. bases in Iraq.
And we could also see, I'm guessing, economic retaliation. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz, for example, which is a key shipping lane in the Gulf, Iran has a large degree of control over. And were it to, say, block the Strait of Hormuz, that would have a huge effect on the global economy.
It certainly would. A significant amount of oil, close to a fifth, if I'm not mistaken, of the global energy trade does pass through the critical choke point of the Strait of Hormuz. But that would be a setback for the Islamic Republic of Iran itself. It would invite a wider aggression to really defang the regime and potentially roll back and be done with the regime. One need only look to the lessons of the Iran-Iraq war, where the Islamic Republic, engaged in counter-shipping operations against countries that were funding Saddam, like Kuwait, for example, and in the end it ended up bringing in the U.S. military, and it was after that period of time that CENTCOM, the U.S. military basing infrastructure, was actually established in the Middle East. So buyer beware for the Islamic Republic if it tries to end up closing shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz.
Has Ayatollah Khamenei underestimated Trump?
I think Ayatollah Khamenei, who is Iran's 86-year-old revolutionary leader and the second supreme leader of the 46-year-old Islamic Republic of Iran, is a man who believes what he says. He's a theocrat, he's a zealot, but he's also been something more of a conservative strategist in his enmity against Israel and against America. And what I mean by that is Iran is conventionally outgunned against those who would chance death to against, be it death to Israel or death to America. And so far, Khamenei's mix of deterrence and terrorism and missiles has bought a weaker regime like the Islamic Republic time. But yes, he has miscalculated against President Trump. He did not think President Trump's 60 days were 60 days. He did not think that that deal would be the last thing on the table. And he did not believe generations of American and Western diplomats and political officials saying that all options were on the table.
How much threat is his regime now under in Tehran? And were it to fall, I mean, who might replace him? We know from history that sometimes, enemies of the West, when they fall, there is celebration, but sometimes who comes along next can be just as bad.
No doubt there is celebration and felicitation when any autocrat around the regime any autocratic regime around the world falls. And one of the lessons of the Middle East, most unfortunately, is that things can always get worse, not better. But I have to say, it is quite hard to get worse than the Islamic Republic of Iran. Even a military coup that simply turns off the fire against Israel, against America, would be a marked improvement. But until you actually get a nationalist, liberal, secular, representative government in Iran, you will not have peace in the Middle East. And I know this is a big issue for the Republican coalition, which is a diverse tent of internationalists and isolationists. Donald Trump has straddled both of those worldview in his approach to Iran, both in deal making and in war making. And I have to say here, it is all up to Khamenei, Iran's 86-year-old supreme leader, how he plays this.
Benham, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much. Benham Ben Taleblu there, Iranian-American analyst at the FDD think tank specialising in Iranian security and political issues.